Back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, and just going away from the games that are obviously taking place tonight, the game taking place tonight, and the game from last night. We have a story here that I thought was pretty interesting to bring up regarding Dak Prescott and his contract extension, because that has seemed to have just fizzled out right now. Talking about the where the Cowboys stand right now with Dak, how optimistic they are. Usually when we come down to it with guys like Jamar, even with the Steelers also getting Pat Freiermuth signed today as well. Cam Hayward recently in the last few days, Trent Williams. You start hearing things about teams getting these extensions done. I also failed to mention that it was funny because it flew over my head today that Jalen Ramsey got extended with the Dolphins. It just completely escaped my mind. And now becoming the highest paid cornerback based on average salary per year, a new 3-year, $72 million deal, just jumping and taking all the attention away from Pat Surtain, I thought was pretty funny. But, these extensions that are getting done now, you start to hear more and more about it because we're right here. The season's already underway, so you think you'd hear more about what's going on with these extensions, but it hasn't really been the case for Dak and the Cowboys. And it doesn't look like they're gonna. It doesn't look like they're gonna agree to much at this point in time. If I had to, make a decision on that, it looks like right now this will be the final year in Dak's contract, obviously, and I don't know what's going to happen after this year, next offseason, whether or not they come to an agreement or not, but it's not an ideal situation to head into the last the last year of the contract for your starting quarterback and, approach it this way, especially for the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, right? You want to secure him for how big the Cowboys are and how much pressure there is on them each and every year. To have doubts around the quarterback position is something that is just going to be talked about throughout the entire regular season. And that's where we bring up this recent report. According to the Athletic's Diana Russini, talking about those doubts and everybody talking about Dak Prescott, the wait seems to go on with this extension for Dak Prescott because of the uncertainty from the Dallas Cowboys with having Dak as the long-term answer at quarterback, right? Not how much they're going to pay him, like some may assume, right? There's been some pretty astounding numbers being thrown out there in terms of contract and how much money Dak's going to be making, right? You're hearing 60, 65 million, things like that, and that rightly so, you think, is what's holding up this deal. But according to Diana Russini, it seems to be the fact that there is some doubts within the Dallas Cowboys organization whether or not Dak is going to be this answer to change the narrative that they have been facing recently in terms of playoff success and things like that. And what Diana Russini actually said was the following. She said, Prescott's looking for a long-term commitment from Dallas, so the holdup here is really the belief from the Dallas Cowboys. This is the guy who's won a lot of games, but is that enough? Winning's not enough for Jerry Jones. We know this. They want to do more, and it just seems like the Dallas Cowboys are uncertain of whether or not Dak has the capability of being that quarterback to really put him in a position to win Super Bowls, and that seems to be what is holding up this deal right now, not the astounding, extraordinary amount of money that they're going to give him, that someone's going to give Dak Prescott, just based on what he does in the regular season. He's going to get paid, but it looks like the Cowboys are coming to this breakthrough thought that, is this really who we want to commit our future to going forward, just based on recent results? You look at this statement now and you can't help but sort of agree with them, right? You look at Dak's 73-41 regular season record, and that's great and all, but a 2-5 playoff record and 3 losses at home really start to make this a sour tasting situation for the Cowboys and Dak, and it really makes you double think everything, any sort of decision that you're going to make, because this is a game changing, future trajectory shifting kind of decision that the Cowboys find themselves in. And to that point, I can sort of understand why they're taking so long, right? We've been on here on constant episodes talking about what's taking so long, but this is a huge decision that they have to make, and it ultimately comes to the question I want to pose you guys of now that where we are in this situation with Dak and the Cowboys, are we just ultimately in a lose-lose situation for the Dallas Cowboys, whether or not they extend or decide to move on from Dak? Is it a lose-lose situation either way? And by that I mean it's that it seems like Dallas has no problems obviously paying Dak what he wants, apparently, based on this report. So why this is a lose-lose situation for me is that, yes, it's justifiable to have that doubt in Dak Prescott now because you're done seeing the performances in the regular season. We know that you can do that. With who the Cowboys are and how much they mean to the NFL in terms of global, recognition, everybody knows that logo, right? The star, how much pressure there is on them. I'm actually glad to see that they're actually trying to make a difference now. It's the biggest move potentially that they're making in terms of improving or reacting and having some sort of consequence to the recent performances in the playoffs. But I think to kind of defend Dak here on the other side of things, I think too much almost goes into Dak at times. And by that I mean I think almost too much pressure, and I think too much of the blame really goes on Dak Prescott at times for starters, right? This is ultimately a team game, and we've talked a lot about the quarterbacks in today's show and how if you have that guy, the guy, elite level talent, they do a lot to mask these issues. And I don't think Dak is necessarily one of the top 3, top 4 guys that we have in the NFL, but still, based on performances in the regular season, you expect more. But to that same sentiment, I think that Patrick or Lamar would say that they couldn't do a lot of what they do. A lot of their performances aren't what they say they are because they have guys around them like Travis, obviously, or a fantastic defense led by Steve Spagnuolo. For Lamar Jackson, a great head coach, great offensive coordinator, Derrick Henry now in there with them, having guys like Isaiah Likely, Roquan Smith on the other side of the ball. They do what they do. They're able to have the leeway that they do and go out there and try things, create magic because they have a great supporting staff around them. But even so, most of what the success is on the field is based on them, right? And a lot of it is based on Dak, but in that same sentiment, I still think that a lot of the blame goes on Dak, and he is painted in a very bad light, but I think not enough goes on this defense for the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll explain why. I feel like the defense isn't getting enough heat like Dak Prescott does, and does Dak put him in bad spots in the playoffs? Yes, he does, but not on every single drive of every single game that they end up losing or that they end up, being in a close game with, right? With how good they've been talked about and how good they've been projected to be in the regular season as well for the Dallas Cowboys defense, I have to expect more out of them in the playoffs. And what I mean by that is you look at the last 4 games for this Dallas Cowboys defense, they've allowed 477 rushing yards total in those last 4 games, 143 to Aaron Jones in the last game where they got smacked by the Packers. Then also, they've been outscored 104 to 92 in those games as well. Michael Parsons, great player, great pass rusher, one of the best in the NFL, only has 1 sack in their last 4 playoff games. I don't want to hear that he's getting all the attention because that comes with any great defense, right? Miles gets all of it, TJ gets all of it, Aaron Donald got all of it, but they even still made plays along, those lines, along all those circumstances they've showed up. And Micah only having 1 sack in all those games is something that has to be pointed out. Also, they've allowed over 1,000 passing yards allowed in those 4 games as well, with 11 touchdowns on top of that. Why this situation is a lose-lose now is because you still have all those same circumstances and those same situations heading into this year, whether you decide to keep Dak or not, the team hasn't really changed from last year to this year. You brought back Mike McCarthy. It's basically the same defense, just with a new defensive coordinator now. The offense is still pretty much the CeeDee Lamb show. You probably got worse at the running back position, and your offensive line, there are still some questions with it heading into this new year. So why is this situation a lose-lose? It's because if you move on from Dak, it's a losing situation because you don't know who your quarterback is going to be. Probably Cooper Rush, maybe. I don't know who else they get, but it's not going to be as good as Dak Prescott, right? So that's a loss. On the other side, if you decide to keep Dak, the doubt is already there, according to this report. You've already planted that seed of doubt in your head. So if you keep Dak and have basically the same team, these doubts, these expectations are still going to be there, but the results are probably going to be the same thing, right? Insanity is doing the exact same thing every time and thinking that something's going to change. You keep Dak, obviously you have a quarterback, a great one, but the results and expecting anything to change is insane because you keep the same team, and now the doubts are out there that the Cowboys are feeling a little bit squeamish of having Dak as the long-term answer. Those doubts are already out there, as if they weren't already, right, to be fair. But now you have those doubts, and you're still going to pay him $65 million per year. That's insane. That's insane to do, but it's the circumstance they put themselves in. It's a lose-lose situation in my mind because of that. If you keep Dak, that's great, but the results aren't really going to change. And next year, if you move on from Dak, they could change, but they could change in a very bad way, right? You could just not be competing at all, and then that's a whole different realm of expectations for such a well-known, well-renowned organization, franchise. It's not where you want to be. So I'm super interested to know how it's going to all pan out. But right now, a lot more doubts and a lot more questions, it seems like, for the Cowboys with their quarterback. And that'll be that segment. We'll see if that deal ultimately gets done. But for right now, we have one more segment to get to. A last segment here to predict the wins and losses for the rest of the Week 1 slate over the weekend. We're going to go through each game, and I'm just going to basically pick who's going to win in each of the next 14 remaining games of Week 1. So that is coming up really quick right after this break. Don't go anywhere.